Hello and welcome to the Dollar Auction Show with Alex and Shimon. Shimon, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good. We are deciding to pivot a little bit the way we talk about. We've been focusing a lot on Bitcoin, investing, and tech. Still do that, not going away. We'll go into some geopolitics where we know, where we have actually inside information, not like the All In podcast, which we used to be huge fans of, but went downhill very fast. And then some, I think, personal interest stories, make it a little bit more exciting. Talk about, interesting people in the space. So we hope this is going to be a good update and a good change.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this new direction because if you think about it, for the last 3 years, and we've been doing this for 3 years, it's pretty crazy. For the last
Crazy.
3, we've been talking a lot about finance and financial stats and like interest rates and GDP growth and all of these things. But all of these things are a function of society. If you think about it, it's a function of technological improvements and of societal improvements and so forth. So I'm pretty excited to move a little bit more into sharing our opinion on what's happening with society. We did a little bit of that before the elections when it was Trump versus Biden, but
And here we are,
and here
four
we are
years
again.
later. Before the like, we should, I do want to talk about one thing. Remind me when we get to geopolitics, is a lot of people are going like globalist versus America first or country first, and there's actually a gray area, and I think a lot of the swing away from globalism is right, but then it goes too far. And I have an example with Ukraine that I'd like to touch upon later, but let's touch upon that later. Let's first open up with our favorite things, which is robots folding laundry. No one had that on the bingo card.
Yeah, yeah. Robots folding laundry or my own. Well, first of all, do you want to share with our listeners what are these robots and whose laundry they're folding?
I'll share actually an interesting story, if you don't mind. Before that, when I was, I came from the Soviet Union. I was born in Ukraine in Kiev, and I remember on the way to the U.S. This is 1991, and I was 7 years old, and my parents were saying that my cousins who came to the U.S. 2 years before that they had this robot that picked up the phone, when you called, and if you weren't home, it picked up the phone and took down, messages and then gave it back to you when you came home. And I remember this very vividly. We flew to the US, and I remember I couldn't wait to get to their house. I want to see this robot. I expect this humanoid that stands there that picks up the phone, puts it there. And they show me, they're like, here it is. And I'm like, where? And they show me the answering machine. And I'm like, what is this thing? It's this little box. And they're like, it's a robot. And it was one of the biggest disappointments in my life. I'm like a little boy expecting this humanoid thing. And they're like this little box. It's a tape, you have to rewind. This is a robot. Um, Lucky for our listeners, the robot that's folding laundry is a humanoid robot in the Amazon factory floor. I think, Shimon, you shared this video with me, which was the how connected and robot enhanced the Amazon floor is. And they actually have a robot that takes laundry very carefully and folds shirts and clothes. And no, it's not as fast as humans, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it's now. What's going to happen in a year or two or three when they're going to be just flying through stuff, and you can run this robot 24/7. The productivity improvements, the next day shipping, which are going to have, are insane. And this is just one of the robots they have. They have these amazing cart things that move boxes all around the factory floor and see and understand where the other carts are. So they almost like create this open traffic flow by themselves. Do you want to explain more?
No, yes, I do want to explain more. But before that, I want to share my story of being extremely disappointed while coming from the Soviet bloc to the U.S.
Perfect.
It actually wasn't disappointment; it was something even funnier. So, my mother had a best friend that lived in Manhattan, and she married a really, really wealthy guy. And this wealthy guy really loved me. I was a little kid, 4 years old, and so he used to bring me gifts. Now, this was the 1980s in Soviet Bulgaria. Now, we didn't have any way to record our voice. A voice recorder was crazy. basically didn't exist. There was no way for a consumer to go into a store in the Soviet Union and buy a tape where you can record your voice. And so one day he gives me a gift. And this is the most ridiculous thing now that I look at it. I actually found a picture. I will show it to you guys. But it was an answering machine that you could put inside of your locker in high school. And it could be activated by these hypersonic whistles, like a dog whistle. And you could give out these hypersonic whistles to your friends. Like, let's say you have 3 or 4 of them. And so if your friends wanted to leave you a message, they would go by your locker as it's locked, blow the whistle, the thing would start recording, and they would leave you a voice message, right? So this was like super, super high tech, even for the US. For the USSR, it was unfathomable. It looked just like magic to me. So here, I will show you. I found it on Etsy. It is sold out. But this was the product. It's called Class Act Locker uh, Answering Machine. And
Oh
see, it
my
comes
God.
with 3 activators that you give to your friends. Now, the thing is, good old Shimon over here did not know what a locker was because I still wasn't going to school. And so I was like, cool, I can record my voice. And so I had this stupid whistle. And like every time you do this, it only records for like 20 seconds. So I would like whistle the whistle, the thing would start recording. I would record voice memos or whatever. After 20 seconds, I would whistle the whistle again. And I just used it personally. It was just like the worst use case of this high tech thing. And just think of where we are right now. You know, it's like 30 years later. But
This
so
is
that was
this is
my point.
amazing. No, I love this. I really love this story. And while you're doing this, I'm trying to pull up a couple of things here that I know I shared with you online, but one of them was, did you see here? I want to show you this commercial. I'm going to share my screen here for a little bit. Let me see if I can share my screen here on our recording. So, um, for our audience, do you remember? This is what they had in the 90s. I don't know if
Is
we can.
talking on the phone getting out of hand? Look out!
The
You
phone
need phone
falls,
relief. The ultimate in
and they
hands-free
have
phone
a
design.
holder
Plus,
here
simply attach the special double back fastener
that
to
you
any
attach to
phone.
the
Then
phone.
attach the phone relief headset. It's that easy. Hands-free,
Perfect.
pain-free. You'll wonder how you ever lived without it. It's perfect.
This thing is amazing. I mean, just the fact that we had this little like holder thing that goes around you and holds the actual, but it's innovation. All this stuff just it's like, oh, now I can do this with a phone. Oh, can I make it smaller? And and now we have amazing things such as here, let's see if so there's a couple of things I want to show um to our audience here. The craziest part is the Amazon factory floor, which is where we started. Do you mind if I show this
No,
tweet?
please, by all means. This all goes into our thesis, our contrarian thesis of why I'm holding such a huge amount of my portfolio in double leveraged Nasdaq, like a
Yeah,
YOLO guy but we actually
cool.
have a thesis behind this. So please.
So yeah, so this is the Amazon floor. So it's basically a tweet for those of you listening to the podcast. Amazon got more than 750,000 robots deployed. And it says most people don't realize how fast the robotics industry is scaling. And Amazon's the perfect candidate. So if you look here, they have a little list, like 2013, basically how many robots were working in the warehouse. 2013, and this is Amazon, 1,000, and 2023 in 10 years, 750,000. But look at
That's
this, there's a video here. This video, I don't know if you can hear the sound, but it almost doesn't matter. I'll turn off the sound. But they have this humanoid robot looking thing picking up a box, right? And what I'll do is I'll actually make the video 1.5x so we can just go through it and chat. Picking up, there's another thing to picking up a box. The shelves move through the aisles, and here's the floor where they have. This is NBC News on the Today Show, by the way, and they have these like humanoid robots picking up, putting boxes, and moving them around, right? These little these guys, these little platforms that come over, pick up boxes, self-handle traffic, which is incredible, and move them around all around the floor. Robotic arms that pick up things from the conveyor belts. I mean, this thing, it's just incredible. And then what it didn't show here, but there was another tweet that showed a humanoid robot actually folding clothes. And so, on one hand, it displaces human labor. Right now, it's assisting. Over time, it will displace human labor. We should talk about that. But from a productivity standpoint, you can run this 24/7, and the maintenance of a robot is fairly cheap. And these robots, the whole point is making them fairly cheap robots. This is what Musk is doing. Robots
Mhm.
that can do a lot, but make them cheap.
Yeah.
Instead of Boston Dynamics, which is, beautiful movement, but they're very expensive.
Well, sorry, Boston Dynamics, this is my pet peeve. Okay, so many things that Elon Musk does are things that other people have been trying to do for a very long time. Electric cars, people were trying to build it. And even like there was crazy, there was a Mr. Rogers show of like from the 60s about an electric car. So or rockets, rockets is not something new. And it's just either the sheer force of will of that guy or his ability to tackle really hard things where other people give up. So there's one thing where I read that's good for both relationship advice and for business advice, which is if you if something hard happens, if a problem comes, right, in your business, you can say, oh no, another problem to solve. It's so hard. Or you can say, every problem that you actually solve, that's how you create value. So every problem is an opportunity. It's just like with customer feedback, right? People say every customer feedback is a gift, no matter what it says. So, like, if it's good, if it's bad, if it's neutral, you can always benefit from it. So it's the same. Every problem that we solve is adding value to whatever. And I'm thinking of my kids and my family and all of these things, all the good things that I have in life, they took a lot of work and they took a lot of like
Yeah,
things that are not necessarily easy. And it just pisses me off that Elon Musk is doing these things that Boston Dynamics, yeah, they have their cute dog. I mean, they displayed it here in the National Mall in DC, and my daughter Paz was like petting the cute Boston Dynamics dog, but that's not very helpful versus here it's actual productivity. I actually want to show to our listeners here about, see, this is like a robot folding clothes, and the crazy thing is it's a very kind of fine motor skills, which is something that was the frontier in robotics, which is just these very fine motor skills. And what this basically means is deflation, right? We've been talking on this podcast for 3 years about this thesis of technological deflation. And I want to show you something, Alex, that I told you about last week, but I want you to see it with your own eyes. So we did a product video of the new mobile app that I'm launching through my company, through the company that I work at called Unchained. And a video that would have cost $10,000 or $5,000 to produce, which is basically shows the iPhone with the screens of the app on the iPhone itself. And this is before the app exists. So usually an animator would have to work on that. And that's when the $10,000 comes. So this we were able to do without any graphics designer. So it's the guy on my team. His name is Jose. I really love him, but he's like a video guy. So he's not an animator. And he was able to do this for free. Alex, this is free. Maybe a subscription for like a monthly subscription for the software, but this is free. You choose the iPhone model, you upload the screens, you upload the transitions, and it generates these beautiful animations
it's
for you.
amazing.
So, and this is just version one, right? And then at the end, we can give it to an actual animator to, do maybe if we want to animate something within the screen. So currently you see the screens are full and the phone is rotating and the screens are transitioning like a PowerPoint presentation. So for example, if I want to show the price graph go up on a screen, okay, I'll pay $1,000 to an animator to make it pixel perfect. But like 90% of the work is already there. So all of that, and the robots, think of what it will do to the cost of commercial real estate, because before, a friend of mine is an investor in commercial real estate. He hates residential. He only invests in commercial. And that it's a fascinating business because it's all about like warehouses, right? You can say it should be dirt cheap because you can build the warehouse in the middle of nowhere. But guess what? Then you have the costs of the gas to transfer things to the warehouse where you do a bunch of stuff, and then from the warehouse. So then it becomes like an optimization problem of like you want to be close to airports, but also close to the city. And then the closer you are to the city, the more expensive the real estate is. So by packing more and more robots into one tiny space, think of what it will do to the cost of commercial real estate. They'll go down. All else equal. We know that the government will print money, and then the
I
costs will keep going up. But if we hadn't printed money, we should experience a crazy amount of deflation.
I disagree with you a little bit. Well, I agree on inflation completely. I disagree that on the commercial real estate, just because to me, what it saves is employees driving to and from the warehouse, right? And it's not even gas. It's just, can you get enough employees to come to your location? If you have robots, you don't need humans. You need some humans overseers, but then you automate the entire thing. So I think there it's going to save costs. I think commercial real estate, we should touch, that's a almost a separate beast that we should touch in another episode. Um, in terms of productivity, where and how it's shifting, and so on and so forth. I think what's to me very interesting here is that you can work around the clock, and you don't have, so you can work around the clock, and you don't have human error components here. Over time, they'll be diminished. They'll be very precise. This, that. Now you're getting rid of judgment, right? So some human judgment helps. You don't want, the world shouldn't be a machine. Else the world would be very black and white and kind of rigid, and I think not exciting. I think humans bring a lot of excitement and interest in art and beauty to the world that robots can't yet. But in terms of production and just mass producing or mass shipping certain things, for sure, you can run a factory 24/7. And in fact, where you're going to save money is that factories typically, a major component of factories is the electricity cost. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you run factories in off hours and overnight, where you're not paying people to come in, you're not paying them, overtime, or frankly people aren't working at night when they're supposed to be sleeping. It's good for people in terms of the circadian rhythm, and it's great for your costs because the electricity input costs, the energy costs are fairly, frankly, much, much lower. And as a final stamp to this whole thing, where I think this is how it relates to Bitcoin, is in some ways Bitcoin mining, for example, when you mine at night, just as a brief history lesson or a technical lesson for our listeners, the electric grid has to match supply and demand. And when you build a lot of renewables, wind specifically is a culprit here. Wind blows at night, and if there's not enough, if there's not enough offtake, so consumption of electricity, you can actually hit circuit breakers, like citywide circuit breakers, when there's a lot of supply of wind because you can't stop the windmills from blowing, or you turn it off. But here it incentivizes renewables because you can put a factory in the middle of nowhere. You can put a bunch of robots. You can say, hey, we'll put wind turbines. And if it blows at night, we'll run the factory at night. No problem, because it's just robots and machines doing it, consuming cheap renewable electricity, decarbonizing the planet, by the way, and creating a 24-hour production cycle that we haven't seen before.
Absolutely. This is very exciting, and this is why I wanted to show this is the NASDAQ QQQ, and
Not the NASDAQ. Correction.
well,
Not the
not
everybody
the
says
NASDAQ.
it.
It's QQQ. Okay, it's supposed to track the NASDAQ. The point is,
That NASDAQ 100.
This is where my money is in double leverage QQQs, and you can see we are already past the all-time high here
Now,
that we had.
can you show us our QLD investment?
I'm just talking about the QQQs.
Yep,
You're
go
talking about
QLD, which is a double leverage. This shows why when you do in daily, see
for
QQQ
sure.
is higher and leverage is lower. Why? Because it's daily. When you go down, it takes a bigger hit. But over time, we will be right.
For sure. And not only that, but also if it's flat, you kind of bleed out. But I don't like this. I don't really care about this comparison because, like, again, you gain so much more on the upside that, like, yeah, we're not at the all-time high, but guess what? Like, we went from $4 in 2013, to in mid 2013 to $80. So we did a 20x on this, like, QLD
In 20 years.
since 2013. So I will take the not hitting all-time high with the other one.
10
My
years,
point is
20x.
my point is not that. My point is that all the people that hate on technology, I'm almost thinking it's almost like saying, oh, all these printing press companies are overpriced, like in the 16th century. It's like, no, 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 you don't understand what this is doing. Like, and it's also a continuous improvement, because now that you have robots, you can lower the cost of certain stuff. When you lower the cost of certain stuff, then it becomes profitable to use it in other industrial production. So it's just like, it's going to change everything. Now, I don't know about like Sharp ratios or stuff like that, but all the people that say that the Nasdaq is overpriced, I don't see any evidence to that. Because again, you and I were talking about PE ratios, it's only like valid, I think, if you compare it to similar situations in the past, right? So you can say this one company had a PE ratio of something, and now it's much higher, and that means that that one company is overvalued. But if people look at PE ratios of the whole economy, of course it makes sense that the more robots you have, the more of your earnings will come in the future. You know, to your point, you pay for the robot now. It's really expensive to buy a robot, but then you can work the robot 24/7. And so it just makes sense to me. I don't understand why people are saying that the Nasdaq is overpriced. I mean, it could be overpriced in the very short term, but like as a structural thing, I don't see any problem. But
Yeah,
again,
I
I'm
mean,
happy to.
it's just
My money is where my
well, you what?
money is where my mouth is. So I'm actually investing based on this thesis.
Yeah, well, anyway, we're not debating. My only pushback is that there's a concentration right now in the Nasdaq, in the top 100. If you look at Nasdaq, it's not above all-time highs. QQQ is top 100, and in fact, the Magnificent Seven, Amazon, Microsoft. Actually, Microsoft has been just destroying things. I mean, if you look at Amazon is stalled out. If you look at the charts, Google is stalled out. Meta is actually at an all-time high, but Microsoft, geez, this behemoth is just chugging along, man. This is just chugging along.
I mean, at
Um,
this stage, companies like Microsoft or Google, or what, I don't know about Google too much, but a company like Microsoft is not different than what General Electric was back in the day. They just like buy everything, buy all the startups. You know, it's more like an investment allocation behemoth versus like a company that does one thing like Microsoft. You know, they do everything now, and it's amazing how they've been able to reinvent themselves with every new paradigm. You know, like there was the personal computer, and then they were doing one thing, then there was the mobile stuff, they had a little hiccup, but then now they really went on the AI bandwagon really well. And Alex, you had a part in that, didn't you? Write strategy slides for them about artificial
it
intelligence.
was a cause of Microsoft's rise. Well, actually, it's funny. When the Nasdaq was hit its high, November 21, Microsoft was at 340, and now they're 400. Jesus Christ. I mean, like I'm just looking at this thing. It's my God. Yeah, I mean, we were looking at future strategy and trying to. This is how I stumbled upon Bitcoin and blockchain. But I love, I hated Microsoft. Personal interest story there is, I remember in 2008, I left my auto job and went to this energy company, and I wanted to get a new phone. I went to the store, and it was this HTC. So it was a Microsoft phone, and man, this thing looked beautiful, big screen, like beautiful graphics. And I was like, you know what? Forget the iPhone, forget Android. I'm going to buy this one. Beyond the beautiful skin, I would get these error messages and this boxy Microsoft like error code XY da 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 da, and it was like go to system and you go back behind the first layer of UX, and it was like janky. If it looked like Microsoft Windows 3.11, okay, it would crash so much that, no joke, on at least 5 times a day, the only way to get my phone to work is I would have to pop off the back, take out the battery, put the battery back in, pop back on, because it would just crash. And I was glad never again will I ever use any Microsoft product. We went to business school, I went to Max. And then after business school, after consulting, this opportunity with Microsoft came. And it was right when Ballmer was leaving and Satya Nadella was taking over. And look, I remember I got my first Microsoft. Had I stayed at Microsoft, we would have had a different conversation, because I had my first Microsoft stock at $35. This is 2014, and now it's at 400. So
So
let's
that's
just
what
say
you're saying.
I
It
left a lot of money
under,
on the table.
what you're saying is it underperformed the double leverage Nasdaq. That's what I heard you say.
That's true. That's true. It underperformed double leverage Nasdaq. I should have been leveraging with you all along.
No, but I
But
mean, I just thought what I love about, so my whole investment thesis came from a book called Stocks from the for the Long Run by Jeremy Rifkin. He's like a Wharton professor, and his basically main thesis was how people like hating on the stock market, but it's actually a really good investment. And he wrote it like in the, right after the 2000 crash or something. So it was like a very contrarian thesis, but he really compares it against commodities, against, like, he literally had bonds, commodities, all the other investment vehicles, and he's like, stocks are just like objectively the best for the long run, hence the name of the book. But yeah, I was like, wait, like, people don't understand that. And this brings us back to our thesis about Bitcoin. I would love to hear your thoughts on the recent price action, which Bitcoin dumped by 20%, from 49,000, now we're at around 40,000. But after the approval of the ETF, and there was a lot of debate about, like, is it buy the rumor, sell the news? Is it buy the rumor, buy the news? Is it sell the rumor, buy the news? Like, they had many different theses, but I want to hear your thoughts on this contrarian thing. First of all, will the ETF be good on the short term? And then what do you think will happen on the long term?
I'm trying to find this incredible meme that I saw on X. Let me see if I can find it. It was like these two kids sitting there, and one kid is having this. Oh, here, I gotta show this. This is so good. This is so good. 1 second. Let me just. I'm gonna share my screen. Uh, Share screen. This is just. Have you seen this? It's like it's like.
Oh my god, mommy! Oh my god! Oh my god! Again. Oh my.
It's like stock investors, -1%, as this child is crying and just freaking out. And then it looks at the person's sister or brother, and it's like Bitcoin investor, -50%. And then the girl's just like, no problem. This is very much emblematic of our space. It's like, we go down on these drops all the time. It's clearly a bull market. What's happening now is this whole GBTC overhang. What came out today is that out of the 2 billion to date that GBTC sold, or 2.5 billion, one of it, more than one, was Alameda, and not Alameda, excuse me, FTX, just liquidating their estate essentially.
Mhm.
And that's one. Two is 900 million moved over to Coinbase today in the morning. So we're going to be dumping. I think we're going to go test some sort of mid to low 30s. And the reason is typically, when you break above a certain resistance, which is around 30, you want to come back and test that that's the case. You don't want the market just overheat and go up. And why is that the case? When the market goes up or down hard, pumps, that means the market is very thin. And so a lot of people are sitting out, but few people are trading hands, right? So those people trading hands are finding some sort of price. Buyers are coming in, and there's not enough sellers. The price keeps on going up hard. But it hasn't really settled with the market with the overall folks of saying, is this the right price level? So typically it comes back down to the previous resistance. This is some technical analysis, but it's really just market sentiment. Think about human sentiment. It comes back down to the level where a lot of people were trading for a while. And it just comes back and says, hey, bulls, you said that this thing is going to go up. Defend this level. You said it's going to go up. Are enough people going to step in and buy now, right? People step in and buy. The market says, okay, good. This was a confirmed breakout, the right breakout. Let's go. And so we have all these things in our space. Some of it is GBTC overhang. Some people are selling GBTC and buying in the regular ETFs. Some people were in GBTC, which is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. They used to trade at a premium, then traded at a discount. So they're in it. You did this. You came in at a discount. You rode it until the discount essentially closed, and you made your plus 15% for nothing.
No, I
It's
made
a great
exactly
trade.
zero. I made exactly zero, but that's okay because they
How
charge
did
me
you
in
make
fees.
zero?
Because I entered in -20 and I exited at -8, so it was
Yeah,
like I didn't write it all the way up, so it was like 12%, and I held it for like 2 years. So it's
yeah.
literally I did it. The Google Sheets show that I completely broke even versus just buying spot ETF at that time. I can send you the
Really?
Google
How
Sheets.
did you break even?
I'm
Is
telling
it
you, I looked at the
taxes?
price of GBTC before and after.
Yeah.
No, no taxes. It was my retirement account. I'm just talking about like pure price action because GBTC was a very expensive vehicle. So like as the premium was closing, they were still charging you exorbitant fees.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They charge a lot. They charge 2% a year. I've been beating that out. But soon, in fact, maybe even today, I'm gonna exit one, buy, I don't know, Fidelity. I'll give them. I'm on Fidelity. I'll give them a nod. And I need to move money off of Vanguard, by the way, because Vanguard doesn't allow you to buy the stuff, and so they can go and blank themselves because
Yeah, I've heard
no
a podcast that
broker
many
should
people
tell
are
me.
moving money away. Although I have to say, I as much as I like, dissing on Vanguard, apparently they don't allow gold either.
Yeah,
So it's more of their philosophy of like they
yeah,
just believe in income producing assets, which is very
yeah,
stupid because aren't people familiar of the concept of a zero coupon bond? Like Bitcoin is exactly a synthetic version of a zero coupon bond. So when people say like, oh, it doesn't have any payments, zero coupon bonds also don't have any payments, and it's a very popular investment. I mean, it's a
yeah.
popular way to structure debt. So it's like I really don't get it. I think so many people are just, they're just randomly saying things. But you didn't say what do you think about the long term? So you said on the short
Oh,
term you
long
think it's
term,
going.
this is massive. Long term, it's massive. It's massive, massive,
What do you
massive,
think are
massive
the most
pump, massively
important?
up.
No, but what do you mean? What do you think are the most important drivers for the fact that it's going to be up? Is it just because it's easier to
It'll
bring
just
money
it
in?
takes time.
Is
Yeah,
it that
look,
it's registered investment advisor?
it's registered investment advisors, and it solves a major problem, which is custody. Like you and I both, obviously hold Bitcoin. We've been talking about it, but if I'm honest, look, it just it's hard. I've had three times in my life now is burner wallets where my wallets were hacked into, and I lost everything on those wallets. It sucks. I lost tens of thousands of dollars in hacks, and I've been in the space for a while. I have two-factor on, and I think I have fairly good cybersecurity hygiene. So I wouldn't want to. At some point, when you're a whale, you don't want to risk it. You just don't. Like very few people want to risk holding their wallets, uh, at a home. It's kind of like if you had gold and you're a whale, you can bury your treasure in your backyard. You can, and that's better. No one knows what it is, and I'll leave some Bitcoin there. But for most people, leaving it, on an ETF and being able to just have someone else custody for you, that's not Coinbase. No knock to Coinbase, and they're great. They, paved the way in our industry. But having someone else do it is pretty special, and the ETF has lower fees over time than Coinbase does. So I think it's going to be a watershed moment. It needs to have enough time. It already has broken records for a commodity. It's already the second biggest commodity ETF as a group for assets under management. That's incredible. It's gold and Bitcoin and silver. How did this happen in a span of a week? It's just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say custody, I completely agree with you. The only thing is, I wouldn't trust one custodian if basically trusting one custodian means that the government can take it away from you. And that's okay if you, for example, if you hold it in a retirement account, it's a bit harder to make the case for self custody. So the company where I worked Unchained allows you to self custody and still get the benefits of a retirement account. But if we're honest, the government knows about it and you're getting tax benefits from the government. So like, I'm not sure that, you know, um, there's a huge, well, let me, basically, I think the most promising thing in custody is what we're working on, which is multi-institutional custody. And I'm sure it will be the norm. So basically the idea is like you take three keys and you distribute them among three institutions. It can be Coinbase and BitGo and whatever backed.
Mm-hmm.
And then two out of the three need to sign, and then you can move your Bitcoin. I think that's the best because it protects you from any one government. You can distribute it among many jurisdictions if you want, but also you don't have to hold keys yourself. So definitely will be an evolving space.
It's amazing. Let's go to geopolitics. I know we're coming late in time. Which part of the world would you like to discuss?
Well, I mean, one thing it's interesting. It looks like the war in the Middle East is kind of coming to a close a little bit. I mean, at least the intensive operations. So Israel is pulling lots of troops from Gaza. I just want to one take that I've seen, which is very very stupid, that I had to call. I have two calls that I want to state my opinion on. One is a bunch of libertarians. Now, look, I'm a libertarian, so like I'm very sensitive to this issue of like ideally, I understand that it's good for the U.S. to not get involved in conflicts abroad, ideally, but we're not living in an ideal world. So, for example, someone said, "Oh, the U.S. is attacking Yemen now." The Yemenis said that they're only attacking ships while Israel is fighting in Gaza. So it would have been much more efficient if Biden were to pressure Israel to just stop the war in Gaza instead of attacking Yemen, because it, lowers the odds of World War III. I'm like, how stupid can you be? Like, don't you see that, like, if you do that, then next time they'll attack ships for something else? Like, I don't understand. Like, what's the difference between Somali pirates? Forget about Somali pirates. The U.S. Marines were founded because of Barbary pirates in the 1800s. They sent the Marines to deal with pirates because, like, the U.S. understands it has an amazing strategic location between the two oceans, but it only works if you have free trade on the seas. So like, and this was also the British Empire before, like they ruled the seas. It was this tiny little island that took over like a quarter of the world, the British Empire. And it only worked because they were the only ones that could police the seas. And so everybody was like, okay, great, you can come colonize us because like, it sucks being colonized, but then at least we can trade and we get to plug into this network of trade. So like, how I don't understand these people that are making these stupid arguments. Like, you could say that what Israel is doing in Gaza is terrible. I actually hate the Israeli government. One of the reasons why I don't live in Israel is because I don't agree with their policy towards the Palestinians. I think the Palestinians should have full rights. That being said, you have to come with some concrete idea of what to do instead of what Israel is doing or instead of what the US is doing. And I feel so many people that are just criticizing without having any solutions. They're just saying like, oh yeah, force Israel to... The other thing is, like, people don't understand. They say, oh, Biden can force Netanyahu to stop the war. It's like, no, they can't, because like the Israeli public is so enraged by what happened on October 7th that even if the U.S. stops giving, the sophisticated weapons and planes and all of these things that Israel depends on, there are enough guns in Israel that the government can just get. There are enough reserve people and there are enough guns. And if Israel wanted, if the U.S., like, for example, boycotted all weapon sales to Israel and something like October 7th happened afterwards, I would tell you what would happen. Like, all the Israelis with their guns would enter Gaza, and there's like 10 million Israelis, and there's 2 million Gazas, and we also still have tanks and stuff. So it would be a massacre. So, like, again, you can say change the policy, you can say whatever you want, but I actually think that it's in Israel's best kind of interest to kill as few civilians as possible. Like, I don't see any advantage to killing more civilians than less. It's just like, it doesn't make sense. All these people that say, oh yeah, they like, no, it's you see the population of Palestine has been going up very very steadily since Israel has been occupying them. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm just saying it's not an issue of genocide for sure. That just like cheapens the word genocide, because like, again, there was a podcast with Saifedean Ammous and Robert Breedlove, two people that I really respect. And they said, Saifedean Ammous said that what Israel is doing to the Palestinians is worse than what the U.S. did to the Native Americans, because the Native Americans did not have property rights. They were nomadic tribes, and the Palestinians had property rights. So Israel took away property rights. The U.S. did not take away property rights. So Israel is worse than the U.S. colonizers. All I encourage you guys to see is look at the population of Native Americans before and after the U.S. colonized them, and look at the population of Palestinians before and after Israel colonized them. You'll see the Palestinian population grew 5x, and the Native Americans went down by 98%. So, like, again, you can have different opinions, but like, sometimes I hear arguments that I really disagree with.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's it is sad that this thing is kind of. I think that people misunderstand the Israeli conflict and as well as the Ukrainian conflict, and this happens a lot with libertarians. It's like it's this whole globalist, and then libertarians are anti-globalist, MAGA in the U.S. or pro whatever country, Brexit and so on. There's something to be said about American culture in America, Italian culture in Italy, and then blended cultures. As people come in, they have to respect the current culture. And there's also something to be said about welcoming in immigrants that are typically a big net positive for societies. I think though there are nations that are vying for power, and so while you want to be on an island and don't touch me government and I'll stay to myself, other people aren't necessarily like that. So as long as other people are trying to come at you and trying to get you, right, you need to be able to defend yourself. In this case, you can say NATO pushed Russia, Russia pushed NATO. This could have been avoided. We cannot have Russia go conquer Europe if we want to maintain the current power dynamics in the world. Now, you may argue these are not the right power dynamics. I would argue these are the right power dynamics. I would want the US to lead the world, not, for example, Iran and North Korea. I don't trust others to lead the world. I think we are the less bad, the cleanest dirty shirt, if you will. And for all of its shortcomings, the US is a beautiful country, and I absolutely love this country. Ultimately, we choose freedom more often than not. So you have to be able to set precedents. Russia can't just go into a certain country without there being repercussions. Or else, what is the point of having an army or to defend yourself? If you keep on getting provoked and you don't answer back, it's all incentives, right? Why aren't we forking Bitcoin? Because there are incentives to keep Bitcoin as is. Why aren't people? We talk about being a strong country. What does it mean to be a strong country? You have to be able to hit back sometimes. Sometimes it has collateral damage. Israel can't be provoked and have an openly hostile neighbor and says, I want your destruction, I want your destruction, I want your destruction, I want your destruction, then come in, massacre people, and then Israel say, well, just don't do it again, guys. We'll have a measured response.
You forgot one important thing. After they massacred people, their number 2 guy did an official interview in the TV and said October 7th will happen again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to stop as long as white colonialists, aka Israelis, are here on our lands. So you don't even have you can't even kid yourself that this is going to be the last time, because they're openly saying it, that they're going to keep doing it.
It's just crazy to me. Like that is just absolutely crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. And the fact that you talk about proportional response. So what should Israel go in and not? Okay, so nobody wants deaths, but should Israel then go in and like rape and pillage and behead and burn alive 2,000 Palestinian women and children and young people? Is that an okay response? Then what are we going to say? That's genocide, by the way. That's genocide. That's terrorism. So it's misunderstanding incentive structures, and this is where people talk out of both sides of their mouths. And a lot of times this happens in our world, the Bitcoin world, and they're like, freedom, freedom, freedom. No, people shouldn't use ordinals on Bitcoin. Wait a second. Didn't you say it's freedom? Freedom to do whatever, if it's your asset, property rights. You should be able to do what I want with it. Our friend Jan posted this thing. I'll go on a little bit. He said you can't exchange one sat for multiple sats or multiple sats for one sat. It's not sustainable. What if you want to do it? What if you find value in an inscribed sat? Why should we stop people? Or is it freedom until it doesn't go with your values and it's no longer freedom? People need to be principled. Principle that I think a little bit grounded in reality, because this libertarian, and I kind of lean there as well. I'm less than you, but we talked about this libertarian dream. It's almost like a communist dream in some ways. It's all nice on paper, except that people's emotions and incentive structures come into play. You can be in your own little corner of the world, nobody bothering you, and if China decides to nuke that little corner of your world, you're done. So it's all nice and good that you are an army of one family until someone comes to, starts bombing all around. Then you're going to be like, oh, where's the U.S. government? Why aren't they stepping in? And then the government becomes a very needed thing. So we just have to be proportional, and just measured and grounded.
Yeah, I agree. And look, it's not like the US didn't do bad things, but again, I just like in the economy, I think it's definitely the cleanest dirty shirt. Everybody else
Yeah.
is worse. It's my in
On
geopolitics and in finance. That's my stance.
this note, Shimon, we should probably start wrapping up.
Yeah, perfect. So, please tell us what you thought about today's episode. It went a little bit off the topics of just pure finance, but would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, actually, some of you came with this idea of moving more towards lifestyle stuff. So, thank you.
I love it. Well, Shimon, thank you very much to our listeners. Subscribe, send us comments, share. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.